All right, guys, let's see if I can make this as simple as possible. Let's take a little bit of a time machine. We'll travel back in time to a couple of weeks or a few weeks before the trial of Charles Adelson was about to take place. We know that Charles had been in jail for already quite some time, for over a year. His mom was then Rashbaum's former client. She and Harvey, they were his former client. But when Charlie was arrested, Harvey and Donna had not yet been charged or arrested. They were obviously suspects. They were unindicted co-conspirators according to the state, but they hadn't faced the music yet. So obviously when Charlie was arrested, a decision was made. We don't have the details, but a decision was made that then Rashbaum would switch. He would become the new lawyer for Charles Adelson. There would be waivers of conflict of interest, at least that's what then Rashbaum said in his interview in the STS show. So there was a waiver of conflict of interest from all sides. And he switched from Donna and Harvey to Charles Adelson. And a new lawyer took over as the attorney for Donna and Harvey. That would be Maricel Descalzo. She's a real lawyer. She's a criminal defense attorney. And we saw her in action when something needed to be done. She was the one acting on behalf of Donna and Harvey, right? So if we go back to a few weeks before the beginning of the trial in the Charles Adelson case, and we have a lot of evidence now about what was happening back there. We have the calendar for Donna. There are no entries anywhere in that calendar for Donna having to meet repeatedly with her attorney and or with Dan Rashbaum. Nothing about preparing testimony, preparing for trial. She was busy with other stuff, right? It was all about helping Charlie, sending money to Charlie, discussing with Dan Rashbaum different ideas for the defense of Charles Adelson and so on and so forth. She definitely was very, very involved in her son's defense. She was trying to keep her son as comfortable as she could remotely, sending money to her son, etc. And occasionally meeting with Maricel Descalzo, and occasionally meeting with Dan Rashbaum. And they were also making the payments of the attorney's fees to Dan Rashbaum to represent Charlie. But we know that Donna and Harvey were unindicted co-conspirators. They had their own lawyer. Obviously, their own lawyer, in general, would advise to her clients, Harvey and Donna, not to testify at Charlie's trial, right? Because they would not be protected in any way. If they testified for the defense, there would be no use immunity, right? So whatever they said at the trial could be used against them. Now, if we're gonna remember what the strategy from the defense was, we know that from the very beginning, from the moment that Charles Adelson took over the defense of Charlie, he didn't go to the media. He didn't announce that his client was innocent because he had been a victim of a crime. They decided from the very beginning that the whole thing was going to be kept secret, that it would not be revealed until the first day of trial, that the element of surprise would be a huge advantage for the defense. And again, when I saw that they did this, in the back of my mind, I actually said it. I did a video about it. And I said, oh my gosh, there must be stuff in all the thousands of records that the state of Florida has in its possession that could be used to fight this defense. There was a reason why they did this element of surprise stuff. There must be stuff there that could be used to demonstrate that Charles Adelson's testimony is false, right? He's going to be testifying, as we know now, explaining away everything, right? Trying to paint a picture that the state misunderstands the evidence because they only have half the story. They don't have the second half, the whole extortion stuff. And so with this whole extortion stuff, they can twist the interpretation of what happened, of the facts that they cannot dispute, and give it a different context and make it look like they're innocent, right? That they were involved in all of this, but not because they wanted to, but because they were forced. It was after the fact that they were forced. They were not the ones who ordered the hit. Instead, they were forced into paying for the murder after the fact. That was the plan. Keep it secret, surprise him with this defense, catch him unprepared, and win. So, Donna Adelson and Harvey had their own lawyer. Donna's lawyer, Marisol, would advise to Donna, you don't testify in your son's case, let's stay out of it, okay? There are many reasons why she shouldn't testify anyway. Not just the fact that her words could eventually be used against her. And remember, in this whole story, she would have to, if she were to testify for Charles Adelson, she would have to admit to the fact that she helped pay for the murder. But say that she did it because her son asked her to do so, and then eventually when she queried her son about these payments, her son told her, well, I'm being extorted. These people killed Raquel, and now they want money from me. They gave him some money, and I have to give him this monthly payments. So she will have to admit to having made payments. She would have to admit to the fact that she knew who the killer was, and that she kept that hidden from everyone before the investigators figure out who the killers were. She kind of knew that it was someone associated with Catherine Magbanua and never said a word, right? So it wouldn't look very good for her anyway. It would be bad for her to say those things on the witness stand under oath. On top of that, she would be facing cross-examination from Sarah Dugan or Georgia Kappelman. She would give prosecutors an opportunity to pound upon all the disgusting facts about her intermingling with her daughter's divorce, those horrible proposals she was sending to her daughter about how to deal with Anne Markel, all the hateful stuff, all the stuff that really would incite, in a sense, the jury, especially if it kept getting repeated and repeated in the evidence. Because if she takes the witness stand, they can ask her about all those things again, right? They already introduced it some other ways through Wendy Adelson, for example. But now, here comes Donna. Wow, great. We can ask her all about those things again, right? So, from the perspective of her lawyer, she wouldn't want her to take the witness stand because she wants to protect her right to remain silent, right? To not say anything that can later be used against her. So what about then Rashbaum and Charles Adelson? In their mind, probably, if I'm them back then, I don't want Donna, like I said, for the same reason I just said, because it wouldn't be good, right? Because she was the one who was so deeply involved. She was the one who really wanted, perhaps, the issue to be resolved. If Charlie did it, it was likely done for his mom, not so much for Wendy, right? So it's toxic Donna. You don't want toxic Donna on the witness stand. So probably Charles and/or then Rashbaum and/or both of them decided long ago that she shouldn't be on the witness stand. If she testified, of course, she could corroborate the whole story about Charlie telling her about the extortion. But again, this would have been seen by the jury as self-serving testimony to protect herself from future prosecution and to protect her son. So it would add very little corroboration, nothing objective to corroborate what happened. It would be very much just her word and that's it. But there would be so much baggage that would come with her testimony that no rational defense attorney would think that that's a serious option. Even if Donna Adelson's own lawyer would be willing to go along and would allow her client to waive her right to remain silent. There's going to be just Charlie explaining away everything. There's on top of that the risk that if she gets on the witness stand and she gives different explanations, she doesn't roll with the same story that Charlie did, exactly the same, especially when there are common facts. The whole issue about their conversations after the bump, for example, if there are discrepancies between them, it will be bad. It will be bad because it will make them both look not credible. Charlie wouldn't have much of an incentive to put Donna on the witness stand. Donna wouldn't want to get on the witness stand in the sense of the advice of her lawyer. So her lawyer would probably say, no, you don't get on the witness stand unless you absolutely have to, because your son's life depends on it, and you want to give away your rights and you want to make it more likely that you're going to be arrested. So you shouldn't do it unless it's a desperate situation, right? What would then Rashbaum have to do with that decision, right? Donna has her own lawyer. So suddenly, Georgia Kappelman, Sarah Dugan start to inquire with Descalzo about whether the Adelsons are going to testify, because prosecutors are like, what the heck is going on? Why isn't the defense doing anything? What do they have up their sleeve, right? So they start to inquire with Descalzo about whether the Adelsons are going to testify. And then the attorney tells them, oh, no, they're not going to, they're not going to talk to you guys. They're going to protect their right to remain silent, but if they're subpoenaed for trial, they'll tell the truth. Which, of course, if they're subpoenaed by the state, they will be protected from future prosecution from whatever they say at trial. I think that's what she meant if she said that if the state subpoena them, that they would just tell the truth. Maybe the prosecutors do that to also mean that if the defense calls them, they will testify then and tell the truth. So, since Ms. Descalzo suggested the possibility that her client would testify at trial and tell the truth if called to testify, right? If the state, obviously she probably meant if the state put her on the stand with the protection of the subpoena from the state, which would give the Harvey and Donna use immunity. So now Georgia Kappelman starts to think, well, wait a second. So maybe they actually will be witnesses at this trial. Maybe the defense will call them. So we need to talk to them. But then when she asks Descalzo, well, can we talk to them? I want to know what is this truth that they would say if they ever were called to testify at trial. Descalzo says, no, they're going to invoke. The only time they will not invoke is if they're put on the witness stand at trial. So this was a bizarre conversation from Georgia Kappelman's perspective, and that's why she filed that motion. So the state was worried about some trickery, and they wanted to force the Adelson's hand to go ahead and then put their position on the record before the trial, find out from them what they were going to say, and it would help also the state get prepared and understand what the heck was coming. What was then Rashbaum holding up his sleeve? They wanted a preview. So, as we know, there was a hearing, there was Descalzo fighting this whole thing, making some ridiculous arguments about why the state subpoena wouldn't have protected Donna and Harvey before the trial. So it all ended up getting resolved in negotiations between the parties, right? With then Rashbaum at that hearing over this issue announcing clearly and unequivocally that they had never intended to call Harvey and Donna as witnesses, that they will gladly remove them from the witness stand, and they don't want to have this waste of time of an interview. And on top of that, there is the whole issue for the state, right? Because if they do go forward with those investigatory interviews, now they're raising an issue there. They're creating an issue, a potential defense for Donna, if she's ever charged in the future, that some of the evidence that was used against her, or that will be used against her in the future prosecution, came or was derived somehow from her statement. So, in the end, it was in the benefit of everyone involved, except for Donna, because Donna would have been receiving protections, in a sense, from future prosecution, by giving those statements, because it would make it a little harder to prosecute her. Not impossible, just a little harder. So she gave that up. Charlie didn't really give up anything, because I don't think that he ever intended to call his mom. There's no way, okay? So Charlie didn't have to give up anything. He just said, hey, fine, take her off the witness list, because we never intended to call her, probably, right? That was, the plan didn't seem to be that they were going to call Donna. And even Maricel Descalzo, in communications with Georgia Kappeman, said, my client hasn't discussed any testimony that she would give with Charles Adelson's lawyer, then Rashbaum. What I think that really happened is this. Georgia Kappeman contacts then Rashbaum, says, hey, who's representing Harvey and Donna now? I know you guys represented them before. Do they have a lawyer now? Then Rashbaum says, yeah, Maricel Descalzo. Georgia contacts Maricel Descalzo. This whole conversation happens, and from the conversation, Georgia becomes suspicious because she assumes that they were going to plead the fifth. She wanted to make sure there were not going to be witnesses, and Descalzo suggests that they might testify at trial. So now Georgia wants an interview, and so Descalzo tells this to then Rashbaum. And probably he's pissed and says, what the heck are you doing, Descalzo? You got to stop this. Remember, we have a strategy. Our strategy here is to keep it all secret. If Donna and Harvey are interviewed, our strategy goes down the drain. You got to stop this at all costs. So then Rashbaum is advancing not Donna's interests, but Charlie's. And Rashbaum wants to win. He wants to protect the secrecy because he thinks that the chances of winning a trial by bringing the surprise at the last second, with the prosecutors not even knowing what's coming during jury selection, it's key. It's very important. It's essential. So he's telling Descalzo, okay, I don't give a damn if your clients, Harvey and Donna, will get some benefit out of this interview. You gotta do what you can to stop it. Now, Descalzo probably has to tell her clients, hey, listen, you get all these benefits from the interview. However, your son would prefer if you don't do the interview and get those benefits, because they want to protect the secrecy of the defense. They don't want you guys to testify or give information to the prosecutors right before the trial that will help them prepare for the trial. So are you guys willing to give up this protection? And do you want me to fight this interview, even though it may be for your benefit to go ahead and give this interview? And then the person who would be waving away rights and agreeing to fighting this interview would be Donna and Harvey, of course, not Charlie. Charlie was getting what he wanted. which is to keep the secret. That's it. Look, even if then Rashbaum still really liked Donna, and even if, in spite of the fact that Donna had her own counsel, then Rashbaum still wanted the best for Donna, and maybe even sometimes gave her legal advice. Who knows? All right. I mean, she had her own lawyer as far as this case is concerned. But whatever, even if somehow he still had feelings for her, that's why a conflict waiver was signed by the parties. Charles Adelson hired then Rashbaum, understanding that then Rashbaum had a prior relationship with his attorney-client, with his mom, that they got close, liked each other, whatever. Okay, so he understood that then Rashbaum also owed some loyalty and obligations to his former client, Charles Adelson's mom. But since everybody, from everything that we see, even to this day, was always aligned in the fact that the Adelsons are going to defend us, as the Adelsons are innocent, we were thrown into all of this by these horrible killers that came up with their idea to kill America on their own. We, the Adelsons, are just innocent people that were robbed by these killers, blah, blah, blah. They're all united in this whole story. And like I said in the recent video, they would all win if Charles won, in the sense that if Charles Adelson won the trial, if he was acquitted, that would be the best possible protection for Donna, right? So there were interests aligned all the time. There wasn't, in the moment that the state of Florida wanted to take the interview of the Adelsons, the only conflict there was the fact that if they did that, they would prejudice Charles, right? So if there was a conflict of interest there, meaning if you look at it from Charles' perspective, he doesn't care, doesn't want his mom to testify, most likely, but he also doesn't want his mom to give an interview, even though his mom will get a benefit from that interview because he wants to keep the secrecy. So that's his interest. Now, what is Donna's interest? Donna's interest would be a balancing factor, right? Because on the one hand, Charlie wanted to keep the secrecy. And remember, I think there's a strong argument that a victory by Charlie would be protection for Donna, because it would make it less likely the prosecutors felt strong enough about the case against Donna to ever charge her. So it would be a balancing act for Mr. Scalzo and Donna to decide, okay, so do we get the protection of giving the statement to the state and enjoying some Kastigar type defense, right? The U.S. Supreme Court case Kastigar that talks about the limitations in prosecution after the fact, after such an interview, because you can't use evidence derived from the interview in prosecuting somebody to whom you give limited use immunity. So from the Donna's perspective, it is a question of what's more important for us, for Donna, right? Is it for us to get this Kastigar defense, or is it to protect Charlie's secrets so that when he goes to trial, he still has that secret? And the whole strategy under which they operated for more than a year, they were preparing this defense, they were preparing Charlie to testify for more than a year with this strategy in mind, will stay intact. So from Donna's perspective, who knows? Maybe the advice from Marisol Descalzo was, hey, listen, screw the Kastigar protections. It is more important that you protect your son's secrets. Again, I don't think that either one of them thought, either then Rashbaum or Marisol Descalzo thought that there was ever a chance they're going to put her on the witness stand for the defense. without any protection. So that was the question there. And so there may or may not have been a conflict. There was a potential for conflict if, for example, Maricel Descalzo thought, hey, we better do this interview. Screw the secrecy. But it seems to me, from what happened, from what was decided, from the fact that Maricel Descalzo fought the subpoena with all her might, that the decision was made in the end that the best strategy for both of them was aligned. They both wanted the secret to remain so that Charlie could go forward with this trial and present this defense for the first time on the first day of opening statements. So let's get on that time machine again and travel forward. Let's travel to the hearing on this supposed motion that Charles Adelson is going to file for a new trial based on conflict of interest. And now you're going to put Maricel Descalzo on the witness stand. You're going to put Dan Rashbaum on the witness stand. Charles Adelson is going to testify, and I guess he'll probably testify in a self-serving way, saying, oh yeah, I wanted my mom to corroborate my story. But then Rashbaum didn't put it on the stand. Instead, he allowed us to waive the conflict of interest. Allowed us to waive the right to call her as a witness. And I guess he was acting because he still wanted to protect my mommy. Well, let's see what the state's going to do. The state's going to put Maricel Descalzo on the witness stand to challenge this theory, right? And it's going to ask, hey, why were you fighting this subpoena? You were representing Donna, right? You never represented Charles. Why were you fighting the subpoena? Did you think that it was wise not to put them through the subpoena and give them a Kastigar defense? And if she says no, right? She'll probably say, well, there was a balancing factor that I had to consider. I had to talk to my clients and say, well, there's two possibilities here. One, you go forward with the interview and you have the Kastigar defense. Or two, we fight it. We avoid giving this information to the state now. And your son's chances of winning go up, of getting an acquittal go up. And that is protection for you. So we made the decision that it would be more beneficial to Donna to help Charlie. That's what Maricel Descalzo is likely going to say. And then Rashbaum is likely going to say either, hey, Charles never wanted to call his mom as a witness. He thought that it would be very detrimental to the defense. It would add very little value in corroboration and it would be otherwise extremely detrimental, which sounds very reasonable. Or that he also recommended exactly the same thing for the same reasons, that they never wanted to call her for that reason. So the corroboration would be minimal. It would be seen as self-serving. And there would be a lot of negative baggage that comes with her testimony. So better keep her out of the witness stand, right? And then, of course, it would be, hey, we didn't want Donna to give away the secret. So, of course, we also objected and we tried to stop the state from getting a preview of our defense. That was our interest and that's what we did. And we were not giving up much when we agreed to waive the right to call Donna and Harvey as witnesses because we never intended to, which is the same thing he said during that hearing, the same thing he said in a later interview at STS. So that's what I expect the testimony will be from Descalzo and from Rashbaum. So now there's no way that this guy's going to get a new trial based on conflict, as if Dan Rashbaum was protecting his mommy and acting against his interest, where the whole issue was resolved really in Charlie's favor by keeping his mom from giving away the secret. And in exchange, they only have to give away or give up something they didn't want anyway, which is calling Donna as a witness. Therefore, their interests were always aligned. Neither was cooperating against the other for the state. And both attorneys for Charles Adelson and for Donna Adelson seemed to have agreed that it was more beneficial to both of their clients to fight the subpoena and keep the secrecy than to give some benefit to Donna from doing the interview before the trial. It was Donna who had to make that choice, really, because that was a more serious decision. Get the benefit of the interview versus not get it, but protect the secrecy. And they seemingly decided that it was more important to keep the secrecy because an acquittal, which they hope for, an acquittal of Charles Adelson would be more protective of Donna. And Rashbaum, of course, with Charles, decided that it was more important to keep the secrecy under which they operated for a long time than to preserve a slim possibility of calling Donna as a witness when they had already decided and prepared for trial without envisioning Donna taking the witness stand. Therefore, there simply is no argument that he can make. It's the only issue that they raised in their motion to relinquish jurisdiction is this whole thing about the fact that then Rashbaum didn't call Donna as a witness, and that therefore somehow that must have been done for a bad reason because he cared more about Donna than he cared about his client, Charles Adelson. We all know that that's just 100% BS, and it doesn't make any sense under the facts of this case. We also know that the prosecutors went into the jury selection process semi-blind, not knowing anything about this defense and about the issues surrounding it. So their preparation and the way that they conducted the jury selection probably would have been different had they known ahead of time about the defense, the extortion defense. They also would have had a lot more time to dig through the records to find evidence that could be used to minimize this defense or to disprove it. So again, this was a huge advantage for Charles Adelson, huge. This was a strategy that they had been operating under for over a year. And so they got a huge benefit out of giving up Donna as a witness that they never intended to call anyway, likely. So they kept the secrecy. They got what they wanted. Charlie got what he wanted, right? What was best for him, either as decided by him alone, by Dan Rashbaum alone, or by the two of them together. Okay? So bottom line is, if that's the only argument, the failure to call Donna, that argument makes no sense. 0 sense. So, I don't see Charles Adelson getting a new trial. Thanks for watching. Mental Lawyer.
Charlie's defense was very important for us to keep it quiet. It was very important that the government not know what his defense was. That was our strategy, and it worked. Not know what his defense was. That was our strategy, and it worked. Not know what his defense was. That was our strategy, and it worked.